Welcome, Voltron fans. This is Mark Morrell, your host for Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast. And we're coming at you on September 10th, 2024, which is exactly 40 years after the beginning of Voltron. And I have to get my co-host on with me, Greg Tyler. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, Mark, it's good to see you. Happy birthday, Voltron.
Yeah, happy
I
birthday,
must,
Voltron.
yeah. So I gotta ask, how in the world does Voltron look so youthful and energetic after 40 years? Voltron is made of 5 lions, and it has less gray fur or hair than I do. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
Voltron has good skin, high titanium fiber.
Okay, that works. Yeah. Alfor must have been a dermatological metallurgist or something. I don't know, but whatever it was, Voltron's looking pretty darn good at 40. So happy anniversary and birthday to Voltron.
And now, back to Voltron, defender of the universe.
We have a very special commemorative episode of the podcast coming up a bit later this year. We would love to have had it ready for September 10th today. But a lot of other things have kind of gotten in the way, Real Lives and VoltCon 2024 prep and Real Lives and VoltCon 2024 prep. So, so we are going to have a special dedicated anniversary episode a bit later this year, possibly to align with the podcast's own 11th anniversary. It'll give us a little more time to put the TLC into this that it deserves, and I think it's going to be something pretty special. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, so we really wanted to just come together like Voltron
Let's do.
and do a really special episode of Let's Voltron just to commemorate the 40th birthday on the 40th birthday.
Right, and that's this podcast.
And that's this one. And meanwhile, we have a bunch of other things going on. Like you said, we have VoltCon panels that we're planning for. And of course, those VoltCon panels will be recorded and released as podcasts later in this year.
Right.
But at the same time, we're also doing a special commemorative combination of the 40th birthday of Voltron with the 11th birthday of Let's Voltron.
Yes, and we don't want to spoil it just yet, but I think it's going to be a really special thing. We've got some early work done. I think we're onto something, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think our listeners and viewers will be too. So we got some exciting things ahead. Um, uh, Before we look ahead, though, or actually, we're going to be looking ahead when that podcast is done. So I don't know how much more looking ahead we can do, except to say I think we do have some great panels in the works for VoltCon 2024. We want to encourage everyone out there, if you've ever been moderately or even just a itty bitty bit curious about what VoltCon is all about, and you can possibly make it to Indianapolis in late October, please check it out. We did recently talk with the folks behind VoltCon, and it's going to be an even greater year than the 5 prior. So please check it out. We will be there with some great panels. There will be some other great panels, wonderful guests, including a very special one. So please check that out. We again do have some exciting recap videos that will be recorded of the panels that we give at VoltCon, and then there's this special one that we don't want to spoil just yet. But why don't we look back at Voltron, back to the 1980s through the Voltronic Wayback Machine, and let's talk about some early Voltron memories that we each have. So, Mark, what about you?
Yeah, so this was kind of inspired by the official Voltron account on Facebook, and they were asking the question, "What's your earliest Voltron memory?" From what you remember from back on the show. And for me, it was that one episode where Pidge was holding a grenade and going after Lotor. And it seemed like Pidge was just so angry and at the same time willing to sacrifice himself for the princess, for the other members of the Voltron force. It just, for me, that was a shining moment of that's what's so special about these pilots. And it wasn't one of the fights with the Robeast between the Robeast and Voltron. It wasn't the forming of Voltron. My earliest memory is Pidge going after Lotor with a grenade.
Yeah, that's a really powerful memory. So I think my first Voltron memory, big Voltron memory of the cartoon was actually the very last production, Fleet of Doom. Um, it sticks in my mind because I missed part one twice. Back in the old syndicated days, before Netflix, before the World Wide Web, before DVDs and videotapes that were affordable, and if you missed it, you were done
That's right.
until it happened to rerun again. Yeah. So the first time I saw Fleet of Doom, it was part two. Fleet of Doom, you might not remember this, but it aired originally, at least in my market, as two episodes of the regular television show rather than a special presentation of the entire 45-minute or 50-minute show. And so I saw part two, and it wasn't until many years later that I saw part one. So that was around 1986. And then in the early to mid 90s, it was rerunning on a cable channel. I don't recall which, maybe it was USA Network. And my best buddy at the time and still today, he videotaped it for me off of TV, but actually a batch of episodes because I didn't have cable back then. And lo and behold, Fleet of Doom was included. But again, it was just part two. So it wasn't until the DVDs in the early to mid 2000s that I finally saw Fleet of Doom in its entirety. So that's one of those early memories that just sticks out. So not quite as cool as your grenade story, though.
One of the other episodes that I still remember from back when I was a kid was Doom boycotts the Space Olympics.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because I remember, oh my gosh, they're out in space and they're doing this Olympics thing just like we are. Wow, that's amazing to me.
And that's a really interesting point. I mean, we can watch that episode now and think, this is kind of silly or whatever, but this was during the height of the Cold War, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Doom boycotting the Space Olympics it would not have been an unheard of thing in the mid 80s between the US and Soviet Union. So it's kind of easy decades removed to forget the context of these episodes. Written by people who had perhaps served directly or known people who had served during the Vietnam War or the Korean conflict, or perhaps even World War II, depending. And so that reality and the Cold War and all that was very much a cultural a strong cultural memory or very current occurrence. So yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, but the thing about it is when that episode actually came out, remember they didn't have the titles, right?
True.
So it wasn't like, the kids that were watching it at the time even had to worry about what does the word boycott mean, because it really wasn't mentioned in the episode. Okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later when you got the DVDs that you found out that's what it was called. But that kind of thing happened a lot, with some of these titles and everything. But when you're watching it, you're thinking, oh my God, they play sports just like we do.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of tying the unknown future time of Voltron with the here and now of the 1980s. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think another strong memory for me was getting several episodes into the Lion Force, and then all of a sudden there was this very brief burst of episodes with this entirely different cast. Same music, similar vocal sounds, etc., music, sound effects, but it was a whole different thing, the vehicle team. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what happened to my Voltron? But it happened for a short burst, then went back to Lions, and there's a huge chunk of those. And then there was an enormous chunk with the vehicle team, and then those later Lion Force episodes. So I remember it was a chunk of Lion, a little sliver of vehicle that was very jarring. The rest of the main first run of the Lions, the entirety of the vehicles, and then the remainder of the Lions post Go Lion, as I would later learn. But I remember each time it went to vehicle, I was like, oh gosh, what is this? But I've since gained a much stronger appreciation for those 15 fantastic folks.
So I always remember equating the vehicle Voltron episodes with being the second season of Buck Rogers because for me, I was a big Buck Rogers fan, so I watched the first season of Buck Rogers. Most of it takes place, either on Earth or out in space, but a lot of things happen on Earth because that's their home base, right?
Right.
And then in the second season, they go on the Searcher craft and they're always out in space exploring, and everything happens at other locations.
Right. They had the cast change, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me it was these basic cast from the season one, and then all of a sudden we have a new cast for season two, and there's more of them, and they're out exploring in space. And it just
Yeah.
seemed to equate a lot to me.
Yeah. I do, and this is something I think I think that transition maybe could have been done a little more smoothly. Other than, I really think that it almost seems like Voltron is of two parallel but very different minds. If it was very confusing as a kid to watch the show, and you hear the theme, you hear Peter Cullen doing a narration, you see the lions, and then they cut over and it's still called Voltron, Defender of the Universe. You still hear Peter Cullen. The narration is very similar. It's the same music, but holy moly, the visuals are entirely different, and it's
Right.
it's such a title shift.
So here's
Ah,
the newer DVD packaging, of course.
yes,
You
yes.
know, it's kind of foil like, it's shiny.
It's party too. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the backside showing the lion and vehicle robots, and yeah,
And of course,
it's amazing.
the bonus feature was Fleet of Doom. Okay. So if we recall, the Lion Force series was 52 episodes. And then the extra 20 episodes came, at the end of that after they ordered more episodes. And so Toei Animation gave them 20 extra episodes. So now you have 72 episodes for Lion Force. And then you
Hmm.
have 52 Vehicle Force episodes. So
Hmm.
you get the 124 from the 72 and the 52, and then Fleet of Doom would make it 125.
Right.
Unless you count Fleet of Doom as two episodes, then you got to say 126.
Yeah. And, yeah, and to get super nerdy, I think me super nerdy. The Lion Force episodes adapted from Go Lion had production numbers in what was called the 200 block. So it was like 201 through 252. The vehicle team ones, which actually in the first episodes of those were produced before the first episodes of Lion, uh, at least the first couple, and that was the 100 block. So 101 through 152, and then the post Go Lion Force episodes were the 300 block. So 301 through 321 minus an episode 318, which is a mysterious so-called lost episode that apparently Mark Handler had outlined and then it was sent over to be animated. They got animation material back. It was considered unusable, so they never finished. They never went beyond that point. Seemingly never recorded dialogue and the effects and all that. One of the Media Blasters DVD sets had the visuals only from that lost episode as an extra, which is kind of fun. Although it's hard to tell what the heck they were trying to do with it. But yeah, it's so fun. All those episodes, so many of them. Did you have any first or early memories of any of the merch from the 80s?
Well, yeah, everybody knew about the Matchbox Voltron, it
Hmm.
was die cast and it was heavy. So everybody knew about that, but not too much other than that, because don't forget at the time I was like 15.
Oh, that's true, right?
So for me, it wasn't as big a deal to go into the toy stores and get all the toys.
Yeah.
Uh, I was already into baseball and other things like that by that time. But I was reminded by my wife. So Kim was a big fan of the Last Starfighter movie that also came out in 1984.
Oh
It
yeah, great
also
movie.
has its 40th birthday this year.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I never saw it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking back to what was I doing in 1984 that I would have missed the Last Starfighter and missed out on all the Voltron toys. I don't know.
What's up with that? Yeah, so my first merch memory, I remember we were in Greenville, Ohio at that point in my life. I was around 8, and there was a store called Murphy's Mart, and they had in on one side of one aisle in the toy section, they had all of the first Matchbox toys, and in the original Roman numeral packaging. So you had the vehicle team as Voltron 1, the lion folks, the lion the lions and all that as Voltron 3, and then this weird looking set of three similar looking black, red, and blue robots called Voltron 2, which was always a huge mystery for me in the 80s, because how in the world would we have known that that was a batch of episodes from an anime program that ultimately would not be adapted into the show?
Mhm.
Um, but they didn't have the box sets with all the robots. It was the three lion sets, yellow and green, black and red and blue, and then they had the miniature Voltron 1 and 3, and then the three air warrior, land warrior, space warrior sets. And then they had the three individual gladiators in the same size packaging as the mini Voltron 1 and mini Voltron 2. I mean, those guys were so confusing to me, because you have a mini Voltron 1, a mini Voltron 2, three mini robots called miniature Voltron 2.
A
It was
lot of
really
money
weird.
there.
It really was. Yeah, I will
Yeah.
call it mini Voltron. Uh,
I
but
have a mini
yeah.
Voltron here.
Oh yes, the Blazing Sword Voltron from Matty Collector, right?
Yeah, well, this was the basically to me, I consider this Mattel. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So the Matty Collector line had the bigger ones, right?
yeah. But you could get that through Matty Collector as well, right?
Right. So I always liked this one a lot because just the how you could move it around so much. You could
Oh
twist
yeah.
it, you can bend it, all kinds of things and put it into all kinds of poses.
Hmm.
It's really stable. I mean,
Oh
just,
yeah,
you
and it's
know,
got that anime look too, doesn't it?
yeah, it's got a
Yeah,
great look to it too. So that was always one of my favorites over the years, just because it was so adaptable.
yeah, yeah. So I want to show off this. I've had this do cameos on the podcast in the past, but my very first Voltron toy I still have, which are the green and yellow lions from Matchbox. I believe we bought these at another store in Greenville called Hearts. And so I saved up money over many months and bought them set by set. So this is the green and yellow. You can see the chrome on these guys is very, very heavily worn.
Hmm.
There's quite a bit of chipped paint on the torso of yellow, because I dropped him a few times. He fell off of the Black Lion after I got him later, and landed on concrete a couple of times, but still survived intact. Just a little worse for wear. I'm sorry, I
It,
can't do left and right
it
here.
means you played
Uh,
with it, right?
oh gosh, yes. So they both got the floppy legs. I mean, they've been
Yeah.
very well loved. Here's green. Again, I can't do left and right on the camera. Look at that greenish, yellowish hinge on the plastic underneath the chrome.
Right.
Very heavily worn, but the heads still fire off of green
Wow.
very quickly. Here's black, which I got second after the green and yellow set. Again, saving up seemingly for an eternity with my allowance. But there's black. Again, worn chrome, especially on the sides of the
Mhm.
waist, because I would always hold it. I would always pinch Voltron from the sides to carry the robot around.
Mhm.
And again, floppy legs from lots of play and love.
They look great to me.
Here's red and blue again, fully intact. Their legs just happen to be folded up, and yeah, there's the red one, and there they go. And I've often joked that you can tell which ones I got, the order in which I got them, because of the degree of chrome wear. Um, these guys are the least worn because I got them last. Black, if you ignore the waist on both sides, is kind of moderate chrome wear. These guys were first, so they got it the worst. But yeah, so much fun. I mean, the show, what a blast. The merch, the toys, all that stuff, what a blast. So did we always ask the question, did you think it would ever be as popular as it's turned out to be? I don't think I would even could have projected my life in any way, shape, or form 4 decades later. Could
Yeah.
you?
No,
I
of
mean,
course not. I would have thought, okay, Voltron, that was something that happened in the 80s. He'll never see it again.
yeah,
And then
just
wow,
like it, yeah. I mean, goodness sakes, a lot of cartoons from the 80s have had staying power because of people
yeah.
who are who heed their inner child many decades removed. But certainly as a kid, I would never have thought it. I mean, my parents never talked about favorite cartoons. The 80s was a boon for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a very unique time in syndication, beginning with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and continuing on with these first run shows that helped to usher in a bunch of toys and other merchandise at that time.
I also think technology had a lot to do with the staying power of these things because you think about had technology not evolved as fast as it did in the 90s and the 2000s and up until now,
Hmm.
we're in the digital age, obviously. We're in the AI age, now where artificial intelligence could be real, you know.
Yeah,
And back then, we just had, you know, TVs with tubes in them, you know. We were
yeah,
just starting to get stereo sound. And so to have that technology, if it had kept going, where that same
hmm
technology was going on for decades, I really don't think we would have had the rejuvenation of the of the Voltron over and over again like we do today. I think it was technology that brought us into the internet age. I mean, to me, the beginning of the internet was like 1993. And by the time we got to
yeah, yeah.
1997, I think you had remembered listening in on John Teichman where they had said, hey, there's these fan pages of Voltron out there. We should do something. And then, they started looking into things and then seeing that 3D was a possible, 3D CGI being a possible way to animate, and then getting into the early versions of that with Voltron the Third Dimension. And, who
Yeah.
knows if 3D CGI had never come along, would that show have ever come along? Maybe not. If the internet had never come along, maybe not. So I'm just thinking that thanks to technology and the evolution of it and everything, it helped bring us three other versions of Voltron since then
And
that we
yeah,
can that we can talk about 40 years later from the original.
that's true. And when you mentioned the 90s and the early fan sites, and certainly Voltron.com and the old forums, I remember those very, very fondly. Um, Before social media sort of took over, and now it seems like everyone gloms to, well, originally it was MySpace, and then you have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and goodness knows what
On and
else
on and
at this
on.
point. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Before everything sort of consolidated into a very small number of social media sites, it was open season out there. I mean, you had, I guess, sort of a community concept in the sense that you could browse pages on different free hosting sites like GeoCities and Yahoo and Tripod and Angel Fire and all those other things out there where anybody could set up a website and throw on some pictures and some text. And when you mentioned the technology of the 90s and that John Teichman and others were looking around, if you think about it, those early websites, wherever they were, in a way, were sort of like the first digital scrapbooks. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
people were flipping and saving images and writing things about what they knew and loved. It really was a lot like journaling, like a sort of a scrapbooking and journaling in a sort of way, and people could open up about their personal interests and likes in ways they could never do, and share it with a much broader community than before. I mean, whether you have an umbrella social media site that's constantly trying to spit ads at you and things of that sort, there was a definite sense of, although it was a bit Wild West because the stuff was everywhere. You could
Yeah.
just you had to use InfoSeek or Lycos or any of those search engines of the old days. And
And we
Google, what
had
was that? It wasn't around then.
and we had to wait a while for things to load and things to
Oh yeah.
upload and download and all that kind of stuff. It's not as fast as it is today. Oh my Lord, we had patience, didn't we?
Oh yeah. And God forbid if somebody called you on the phone, your landline, while you were downloading some website with a few pictures of Voltron or whatever.
You'd have to start
Yeah.
all over again.
Oh my Lord, yeah.
Yep.
So the times were very different, but I do agree with you, Mark, that had it not been for the internet, who knows what would have happened? How would anybody just by picking up a computer and dialing up somewhere have any inkling that Voltron resonates or any of these older entertainment properties?
How would we know all those Voltron fans were out there? Do you do you know this podcast has been listened to in over 150 countries, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
wild.
I'm amazed, that we've been able to reach out to that many people around the world, and it's all because of this technology, and we wouldn't be able to do it without it.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So this Voltron thing has uh, had a life all its own, and through community and technology and maybe a little bit of magic, Voltron has persisted, and uh, it may have its times where it's like a sleeping lion, but it certainly does roar again every now and then, and fans like our listeners and viewers and you and me um, are keeping that lion alive.
Yeah,
So
so now that we've passed 40, there may become a new age for Voltron and new Voltron fans. So you may be looking at a new generation of Voltron fans coming through maybe a particular movie that might come out in the near future.
yeah, we'll see. It's been talked about for a long time, but
Yeah.
it is fun. It is fun to meet fans, old and new, however we can. So I'd like to extend an invitation that we don't always formally do in our normal podcast episodes, but I seem to remember this being a little more common in our earlier ones before I came along. Maybe I ruined it, Mark, but having people reach out. If you guys ever want to share your Voltron stories with your fellow fans through our podcast, feel free to reach out on social media or through the email address. We used to have a voicemail back in the day, something with mullet in the phone number, as I recall.
It was.
Um, yeah.
So
Um,
so can I
yeah.
just go over all the things that we did when we started? Okay.
Oh, please do. Please do. So back in 2013, right?
So let's go back to 2013.
Okay.
Now we're back in 2013. Okay, we officially start this podcast, and of course, we're going to start this podcast on those avenues that have podcasts. Back then, it was Apple. Apple had Apple Podcasts, and
Mhm.
there was maybe a couple other podcast venues at the time.
Right.
All right. Now there's millions of podcast venues out there. And so that's where the podcast was, and it was all audio. Okay,
Yes.
we would we would record these things on Skype.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so thank God we had Skype at the time. And then I would take that recording of Skype and put it onto GarageBand on a Mac computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would edit it through GarageBand. And it would take so long. Oh my gosh. And then
Yes, I only helped you edit one podcast ever, and it took me forever. So my hat's off to you, Mark.
so that was back when we did Skype and GarageBand and all that, and the settings that we had to do to make it work was just horrendous. So that was that. And then we had also started the podcast with a Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
with a Twitter account, with an Instagram account, and we had a Pinterest account. So then we also started a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the YouTube channel we thought we were going to use just mainly for doing like toy reviews and things like that, or if we ever went out to the cons and did any kinds of interviews or stuff like that, those would be in there. I never thought that we'd actually be using the YouTube for the actual episodes, based on the fact that when the pandemic came and Zoom became a big thing, that you were able to do video conferencing through Zoom and then using that as a platform for doing podcast recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So, so then we had that through Zoom. So now you have video versions of our podcast on the YouTube channel, in addition to all the other videos we've done with interviews and toy reviews and some little fun things that we did every once in a while. But those are all out on the YouTube channel. Now, in addition to the YouTube channel, we had a TeePublic store that we started a couple of years after the podcast started. And that TeePublic store is just any shirts that we came out with or designs that we came out with. At the beginning, it was artists that we had brought on to do art, fan art podcasts. And
Mm-hmm.
we would have those artists then put together a special design just for the podcast, and then we would release it on the TeePublic store. The TeePublic store is still out there, and it is currently now linked to the YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
So there is a way to get to the TeePublic store from the YouTube videos.
Okay.
So that's happening now. I had also created an Alexa skill out there that we had fun with after VLD came out. And,
Mm-hmm.
You can still go on Alexa and say, Alexa, open Let's Voltron, and you get any one of like 80 different phrases. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah. And then, there's been other things that we've done every once in a while that hit different media types and tried different things. But pretty much the things that are still sticking are the Instagram account, the X account, the Facebook account, the YouTube channel, and of course everywhere that podcasts are heard, and then the TeePublic store. And
the voicemail has been gone for a long time, right?
Yeah, voicemail has been gone for a while, but we still do have the email address. So we still have Let's Voltron Podcast at gmail.com.
Yep.
We still have that. And of course, you can reach out to us, through comments and stuff on the YouTube videos that we post for the podcasts, and comments on the posts that we put for those podcast episodes. All those posts that we put on either Facebook or Instagram or X.
Yeah. So we'd like to invite you all to share your Voltron memories with us, however you wish. And if you're good with us sharing those on the podcast, Let us know how you'd like us to reference you, maybe just your first name or a screen handle or something like that. It's always fun to share Voltron stories with fellow fans. So, um, in the meantime, happy 40th anniversary to Voltron.
Yeah, happy 40th birthday, Voltron.
Yeah, form blazing birthday candles.
And we'll see you all next time on
Let's
Let's
Voltron!
Voltron!